Welcome back. And for this session, I'm joined by Jan Nielsen, who's Senior Solutions Architect at Nordea. And we're going to be talking about APIs, API architecture, and how security and quality are embedded in that architecture and are embedded in the development and testing process. Jan's going to be telling us about how Nordea has been building its API platforms to meet the standards established by the European Banking Association for PSD2 and for open banking, and how Nordea is turning those platforms to its competitive advantage. We're going to be talking about how Nordea has chosen its solutions, both in the cloud and on-prem, solutions for governance, testing and release, and how its plans for the future are taking shape. So the technical challenges of quality assurance for APIs. Jan, welcome to our forum. Thank you very much for joining us. Can I ask you to start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, your role at Nordea, and a little more about the story of how you've developed your platforms for open banking?
Yes, of course. Jan Nielsen here. I'm the head architect of open banking in Nordea. Open banking that provides the APIs for the PSD2 compliance scope. As you also described, the EBA has told us that we need to provide services that can open up for this data resources that we have inside the bank from our customers. So the customers are owning the data, but we do need to provide that for third-party providers outside the bank. And what I've been doing for the last four and a half years, trying to provide that data in a secure way, and also providing some insights of how we do monitoring and do the performance monitoring for the externals, so we can provide the services as they also see services from our own net banks. And that's what I've been working with this last four and a half years.
Okay, thanks very much. So talk us through the timeline of your API platform build in relation to PSD2, and tell us where you are now. I mean, how does Nordea benchmark its progress here?
Yeah, well, I would have liked to show you the screen here, because what we have as a benchmarking for our APIs and the platform itself is we use InnoPay for one of those reasons that they do the monitoring of these open banking APIs. And then we try and see ourselves in the context of other banks. And we are moving toward this very comprehensive experience, because we started at early stage with doing the open banking APIs and creating this platform for future investments also. But we didn't provide that many APIs. We sort of started out with doing the compliance scope in the beginning, and by that we have gained a lot of experience in developing and also quality assurance, and how do we test these APIs both inside and outside. And that's where we are now, and we're trying to move up in that right hand corner. Instead of being very comprehensive experienced, we would also like to be having more APIs to actually offer our customers outside, not just PSD2 scoped APIs, but also APIs that we can actually monetize at some point.
Forgive me, I muted myself for a minute. I believe you have some slides you can share that illustrate, how you're platform is managed?
At least I'll try to share this.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, you're seeing it. Yeah, so what, sorry, what was the question?
Well, I believe these slides are going to illustrate how you've chosen your management platform and how the platform works in terms of security, in particular security gateways, and with compliance with those PSD2 guidelines, the European Banking Association's guidelines that you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll try and share the correct screen here. So the security that we've built around this is we've chosen the IBM platform because it actually does bring us the security of credentials for the TPPs, and it also is very secure when it comes to onboarding of these third-party providers. It has sort of multi-tenancy, and that gives us the opportunity for also giving out the possibility for the TPPs to actually monitor and doing analytics with our platform. So TPPs can actually do themselves a favor and monitor their customer activity inside the platform. But it also gives us the opportunity to manage who is allowed in and who is allowed to specific product types that we offer on the platform. It also secures how we expose these APIs, what kind of authentication and authorization schemes needs to be in place. And yeah, these are configured data powers, so it gives all the security that IBM offers on the platform. So that's why we chose IBM to bring us this.
And how does the platform connect with the development and the testing quality assurance process?
Well, the testing is a bit of a sort of a, yeah, it's a bit difficult because we do offer the testing capabilities in another part of the platform, because we do have two parts of the platform installed. There's one in cloud, which we then have, we've named it the sandbox because it's actually not connected to any of the core systems that we have in Nordea. It's connected to mocked backends, so that means that it's giving out static content, but it gives everyone an opportunity to actually test applications against these APIs that we're going to provide in a real live on-premise platform as well. So this is how we assure the quality is there. Sorry.
No, I was just, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you have the cloud and the on-premise approaches. You have two different approaches. And fundamentally, the reason for that is what?
Yeah, the reason for that is that we would like to actually give the opportunity to as many developers and businesses out there. So we wanted to gain attention from a lot of people, because we also know that some ideas are not coming from a business opportunity or something like that. It also developers that has an idea about what can we use this data for, and to give them an opportunity to actually play around with the APIs. We have this cloud-based test data driven approach, which again, I said we call it the sandbox because it's not connected to any real core system. But when you are sort of ready for doing the actual production style application, you would need to have a license, and that's not always the case for a single developer that would like to try out these APIs.
Right.
But the license to operate as a third-party provider is something that you need to obtain before you can onboard on the real system and production system. So
Okay.
that's how we sort of try to divide everything into two.
Okay, good. And you mentioned a point there about the functionality mimicking everything a real integration would. What can you tell us about your use of virtualization technologies?
Yeah, to bring virtualization, we, as said, we have this cloud platform, and we do use that as the virtual services that we provide. If you're maybe talking about virtualization of data, we don't have that at the moment. We are only providing static data, that is the application's sort of internal workings. So if that's what you're asking, we don't have that at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Good. So what are the key technical challenges in API testing that you've addressed? What has Nordea learned that maybe you can share a little with our fellow bankers?
Yeah, one of the key challenges I see is that we as a bank would of course have production ready data that will not be available for testing. And if you're going to test on a production service, which means that you would need to verify that your deployment was okay, then you need some personas that would be enabled in production to actually perform the same functionality as a normal or one of our real customers. That's not really an issue internally. So when you test everything internally, you can have test data provided for you, but when you move into production area, we don't really have that testing facility. And then you would come into sort of a situation where you need your colleagues or fellow colleagues to do the verification of your deployments. So that's one of the challenging things that I see when doing this kind of API, and us being a bank that don't really allow agreements to become testing agreements instead.
Mm.
And then you need to have some kind of functionality to do the business verification. It's not always that APIs are very intuitive to work with for business representative. So we had to develop also some easy solution for our business people to do the verification. When it goes into production, we have a UI which is then used for business verification in production.
Yeah. And then you mentioned also test automation as your final point. And where are you on the curve of automated testing? I mean, for example, have you been converting manual testers fully to automated testers? I mean, a lot of banks also have to assess which apps can be fully tested, fully automated in testing, and which are perhaps more sensitive from a compliance point of view, for example, and need to be manually tested, perhaps. You mentioned you're using Tricentis Q-test for everything internal and attached to a robot framework. again, where are you on the curve of automation?
I'd say that in the hub, in the open banking project that I've been working with, we've continuously tried to automate every test aspect. There are some issues, again, around authentication, authorization, which needs to be interacted with manually, because you have different types of authentication mechanisms that needs a device to do two-factor authentication. So you would need that in the loop when you do testing, also internally. And that means that there needs to be someone taking care of accepting two-factor authentication, for example, to be able to test it fully. So when we have this sort of circumstances involved, then we do it manually. But I would guess we're at 60% automated testing at the moment.
Okay. And do you have a target, for further increasing that proportion?
Yes, it's definitely one of our targets, and at the moment we're also doing what we can to provide these test personas that I mentioned before in the real production environment. It's pretty difficult to do in a banking environment, but we're trying our best.
Okay, and you mentioned as one of the points there, challenge business verification, and I wanted to ask you more broadly about how you benchmark, the impact that better apps more quickly, better APIs more quickly delivered translate into a competitive advantage. And of course, you, like all European banks, the requirements of PSD2 and open banking have been a cost. It's an upfront cost. But of course, as we discussed at the outset, we also have to look at how PSD2 and APIs are translated into a competitive advantage for banks such as Nordea. How does that flow back into the development and testing process? I mean, are you benchmarking customer satisfaction, for example?
That's one of our also key initiatives. We do have a sort of support functionality, which is also taken care of by the developers themselves. So we do have this very, very close contact with customers that are having tickets produced in I think we call Zendesk, which is the support desk tool. And we do have developers overlooking these tickets and also making requests or responses to the outside. And by that, we also gain a lot of knowledge from our customers. What are their key issues that we could try and solve internally also? And this is also coming back to what we call innovation sprints, which is being very much used also when we have a sort of issue that could be solved by us implementing some extra functionality that's taken up by the product owners in our teams, and then we'll try and figure out how to actually solve the issues that the TPPs have.
Okay, thank you. And so your final slide here is on the technical challenges that you are going to be approaching in the future, and the roadmap that you have for the next year or so, 2 years. Please take us through your points here.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is now we've had this compliance in scope for so long that we've now finally come to a conclusion that, okay, now we also need to meet some of the requirements of making income for the platform. It has always been a sort of in the strategy of getting to that point where you can actually monetize some of the APIs. So that's where we are at now, and this is our future goal, or our future strategy, to actually meet more and more customers in the platform, and also try to get them sort of maybe collaborating with us, doing new APIs, new functionality, new products that we will try and create for them, but also together with them. And that's what we are aiming at in the future. We're inviting more customers to actually be involved in how we develop the APIs and how we can meet their requirements, and also maybe solve some of their pain points that they have connecting to the bank. And that's what we have in the sandbox, and that's why we have this sort of platform in the cloud. We call it the market, API market, and that's where we also intend to market some of the new ideas that are coming from internally in Nordea. There are a lot of providers internally that we also want to expose to the outside world. So that's how we do it. There's of course some internal lobbying where we would need to sort of make aware that we do have this platform, and this is the opportunity for the some of the domains inside Nordea to expose some of their data, and then maybe get some revenue back on the platform investment.
Would you be able? I mean, presumably you're talking about sort of a very broad range of businesses here, from capital markets, wholesale banking, through to, of course, retail banking. You're talking about also external customers, retail companies, manufacturing companies. Where do you see the? I mean, this may be something that you can't talk about in great detail because of for competitive reasons. But where do you see the most demand for this monetization of or the generation of revenue from a competitive advantage in better APIs? I mean, is it in the from the internal customers, or the external customers?
I'd say it's both ways. I mean, it's coming from both sides. Of course, there are many companies outside that are doing partnerships with Nordea, and of course they have their way of communicating and delivering services inside. But this is an opportunity for them to actually market these APIs in a broader perspective. If they want to marketize this, we do have the platform to do so. Okay. So it's not a one-to-one relation we're aiming at. We're aiming at doing many-to-one relations. So if you're a partner of ours, it's not going to go through the open banking platform. It's a one-to-one relationship between the provider and the service consumer. But if you have, yeah, sorry.
But you mentioned premium content as a bullet point on this slide. What kind of content are we talking about?
Yeah, basically this is actually we've done this part also within the last couple of years. It's regarding accounts information, for example. So we actually used the PSD2 interfaces that we needed to build also to become interfaces that customers of ours would be able to use. So instant reporting means that they instantly can access their own accounts information, transactions, and so on. So this is kind of the premium content that we're trying to provide also for single customers that are not licensed third parties. So they do actually have the opportunity to engage with us, make an agreement that they will consume information through APIs. And also, we do have payout solutions for customers as well who'd like to use that.
Okay, and of course, all importantly, as you say there, at what cost are these premium services valid? Well, how do you set about answering that question?
Of course, there needs to be a business case to actually solve some of the issues, and then we need to figure out is this cost of building an API, does it have a cost higher than the income? And it might not be feasible, but we need to be aware that there are consumers out there that needs APIs or would like to have APIs instead of some of the existing services that we provide, or in addition to the services that we do already provide. So this is some of the exploration that we need to do, and that's also one of the key elements of having this sandbox. We do actually have consumers that are, as I said, exploring together with us, figuring out, is this actually going to take away some revenue from one service, or is it going to add revenue to have this service via the platform? And in many cases, it's actually adding revenue.
Yes.
So, but it needs to be a business case.
And finally, Jan, thank you. And finally, in terms of the technical challenge, is there are we at a point where you can see that there's an optimum number of APIs that a bank like Nordea should have, or does the number of APIs simply continue to proliferate? And in turn, is that a sort of a never-ending expansion of the management challenge?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but it's I mean, we're trying to move as much as possible to the platform, because we see that this is a demand that comes from the outside, from the consumers, from our customers in general, and we may be able to actually attract more customers if we provide APIs for many of these domains internally. But again, it's always comes down to the business case specifically, if it's worth doing it. But I guess we'll have to also look into the market and then see what else is actually being provided. And I guess it will be a sort of advance if you have multiple APIs available. Yeah. And that's where we want to be as well.
And so perhaps again that is emerging as the competitive advantage that the larger banks have, again, compared to the fintech challengers that have had the advantage of starting from scratch, building from scratch, possibly. Yeah, and thank you very much.
Yes, definitely.
If you don't mind returning, ending your screen share, so we can say thank you to you properly. Thank you for that overview of your architecture at Nordea. Do appreciate that. There you are. Thank you again for joining us and taking the time to prepare your presentation. We do appreciate it.